But thanks for coming. My name's Trevor Cameron. I'm the general manager here. I've been doing this a long time. Gretchen used to work with me at White's many moons ago. About 18 years running that place, and this is 12 now at Sunnyside, so that just means I'm getting old, right? Yeah, we do too. So it's still there, but they're different business now. So it is. If I step to the side here, you'll see she's our famous billboard lady. Little so she's from the Everett Clinic. They're really kind to sponsor one of my classes each month here at Sunnyside. So I don't get any money. Sunnyside doesn't take any money. This is about you guys. So what we were hoping to do is give away gift cards as part of the class. So I've got 6 of them, $300, thanks to the Everett Clinic, that we will be able to pass out here at the end of class. I'll ask some simple questions, I think, and we'll see who gets their hand up first, and we'll do that at the end. So thanks for coming, and really thank you to Everett Clinic. I mean, I'm an Everett resident. It's a great local business, all about healthcare. They got a lot of offices around the area. So remember the Everett Clinic. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and probably the most common question I get year after year after year is, how do I make my yard look interesting through the whole season? It's really easy in spring, summer, fall. We all get some fall color. What do we do in the winter? What's really going to pop in the landscape all year? The easy answer is just come down to Sunnyside like once a week. Do some shopping, whatever. Oh, yeah, that looks good this month. But it's really not a bad idea. I mean, I'm not once a week's probably too much. Well, we'd love to see you, but even once a month or once a season, you're going to walk the displays and go, wow, I haven't seen that, because there's a lot of plants that we can get access to this time of year I can't have in spring, or vice versa. So if you kind of get into the habit of doing it once a season, you'll find something that's kind of missing in the yard. This is not about my taste, it's about your taste. I might like a lot of things in the winter that you're like, I can't stand yellow, looks like it needs fertilizer. I love yellow. So find something. I think you'll find a little bit of everything in here today that hopefully something will catch your eye. It's been an interesting year with weather. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I've been here my whole life, and I can't remember this dry of a season. We're lucky that we've got reservoirs and rivers and creeks and snow coming, but it's been literally 4.5 months since we've really had any amount of rain at all. The landscapes are stressed. I'll speak for me. I don't water a lot. I don't know if you have irrigation. If you don't, we can certainly talk about that, do the questions at the end. But a lot of plants are going dormant early. It doesn't mean I'm dead. If it's an evergreen, that's not a good thing. But if it's a deciduous plant, that's what I'm going to do here in dry summers, is I'm going to go dormant early, maybe turn color, maybe I just go brown, and I'm going to try to save myself for the next spring. So a lot of people calling last month, oh my God, this turned brown. What do I do? What do I do? Okay, if it's deciduous, you'll be fine. Bark's still healthy. It's conserving itself to come out next year. This is a typical year that we do get some irrigation. This is a class I get a lot of questions. A lot of us live in Washington, love the outdoors. We drive up Highway 2, in the winter. We're up Snoqualmie Pass, and you ask, well, why am I driving up that pass and I see the most brilliant orange, red, and yellow vine maple? I have one in my yard and it turns brown and yellow. I never get any of that color. That's part of it, is just that stress. I mean, the more you irrigate, better growth you're going to get, but you got to kind of practice like I do. When we get to late summer, we want to kind of harden off that landscape and quit watering so much. We shouldn't, even if it's dry now, you shouldn't have your sprinkler system on every morning for 15 minutes. It should be cut back. If we let those plants kind of gradually harden off, you're going to get the superior fall color like you would in nature. And I'm not saying, turn your water off the 1st of August. That's probably not a good idea, especially this year. But maybe you water once a week. Maybe now it's every other week here as we get into September, October, so you can get those vivid fall colors. We overwater. I hear it every year. Vine maple's the poster child. I bought that because I love the native fall color. Mine just kind of goes yellow for 2 days and then turns brown and drops its leaves. Well, yeah, we're probably too wet. Was where we're watering that a little bit too much. So keep that in mind. To me, winter interest. I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures here. We're going to go fast and furious because there's a lot of cool plants, and I didn't even bring in half of what I could have. But, the basic things I'm looking for, you're going to find right on that handout. If you don't have a copy, I've got some at the back there. But we're going to talk about evergreen stuff, conifers, structure, foliage, variegation, twig color, barks, all the stuff to me that would look pretty cool when there's not much else going on. We have a lot of green here in Washington, which is probably why I like the yellow so much. But if we can find plants here and there to pop against that green belt or other greens that you have in your yard, it's going to look sharp all year long, and especially in the winter when there's not a lot going on. The perennials have died to the ground. What's left? Sweet. I've got some twig color. I've got some yellow. I've got some variegation. I've got different textures, blues, a whole bunch of that will help us as we go through. The two things I'll tell you now, and I won't spend a lot of time on today, I'll show you a few, is conifers. We have a specific conifer class coming up. I do one every spring. We'll do ours again. It's just about 2 weeks out, I think, in October here. So if you want to learn about really cool dwarf conifers, especially, we'll do that at that class. We added a new one called Evergreen Perennials for the first week in November, November 5th. And I'm going to talk exclusively about hellebores, heucheras, Virginias, all the small perennial plants that we can use in our pots and our landscape that don't go dormant in the winter, or specifically with hellebores bloom all through the winter time to add some interest. So kind of keep that in mind. So we'll focus a lot on bark, berries, twigs, fall color, a little bit of everything. So let me get you going here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Maybe. Didn't work. Huh. This way. Down there. There we go. I think we're sharing now. So if we go through some pictures here, I'm going to go pretty fast because there's a lot of slides and I don't want to make you stay for 2 hours unless you want to. So we'll go through a couple. Again, if we just kind of read through there, everyone can see the TVs okay? That's nice. No glare today. We got big ones. So, again, we're going to, talk about conifers here at the class, but, look at the colors, the textures, the different ways we can utilize those. A lot of broadleaf evergreens up here, rhododendrons, an example, camellias, pieris, a lot of our staple northwest plants are broadleaf evergreens, but I look for ones that turn color in the winter but don't drop their leaves, or show some variegation, or you'll see some of that. A lot of cool fragrance stuff, to be honest with you. I don't know if you've explored fragrance in the winter, but we've got a lot of good options of plants that we can use in the wintertime for fragrance. Go bold. I like variegated stuff. It may not be your thing. I love yellow. Again, it may not be your thing, but even different shades of green, I think, would give you some of that foliage effect. And then again, like I mentioned, the perennials coming up here in a couple weeks with the heucheras, hellebores, and some other things as well. When I look at deciduous, I love fall color. This is my favorite time of year. I love when things turn. I wore my orange shirt today just to celebrate fall color class. That's my favorite color. So, lots of cool bark colors, twig colors, and maybe it's even branching. Everybody knows me here. I love Japanese maples. It's one of my favorite kind of genre of plants. And if it's pruned properly, a lace leaf or a coral bark, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific maple, but really pretty silhouettes in the wintertime. They're attractive plants even if they don't have foliage on them. Lots of good berries that persist in the winter, different fall colors we'll look at with some of the plants. I'm looking at hummingbirds. I don't like hanging the sugar feeders out all the time. I'm trying to find something natural for those little guys to have to stay here for the wintertime. We'll show you some of those as well. And then for me in my yard, I like berries. I got some fruit. I don't know where you're at in your landscape, but we need pollinators. If I'm going to have a successful, apple harvest or whatever fruit or berry it is, I need little bees buzzing around my yard early in the season, not May, not June, but in March. And so if I pick some of these right plants out, that again will help that pollinator activity pick up a little bit earlier, and that will help my production on some of the other things. We'll do a little bit of bulbs. I have bulb class tomorrow, so I'll show you a couple bulbs, and we'll go through all the bulbs specifically tomorrow. So a couple conifers, and I just put a couple up here to kind of maybe get your appetite. Hopefully it'll come down to the conifer class. But here's just a couple. If I talked yellow, the Chief Joseph pine there, that's a lodgepole pine. If you walked in the yard and saw that in July, you'd be like, just another green pine tree. But it turns that color with the frost in the fall, and that glows the entire winter. Really cool plant. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, which is why I get a bunch of these gold mugo pines here, because that's kind of the same idea. So maybe I spend $50 instead of $200 for another cool pine. And it's a shrub, not a tree either, but it's not a grower. You know, if you've got good sun, good drainage, it's a really easy pine to grow, super drought tolerant. But that is probably the quintessential winter conifer. Everybody who collects cool things starts coming in here about this time of year asking for the chief, they call him. The Chief Joseph's a fun plant. It's pretty narrow. Boy, I don't know that you'd ever get maybe 10 or 12 feet tall. That'd take a while. Yeah, maybe pretty narrow, like probably 4 foot across. Yeah, pretty slender. Icebreaker, excuse me, is a variety of Korean fir. I don't know if I brought one of those in, but that's a miniature thing. So I don't want a tree, but I just want a little, 3 foot wide, 2 foot tall, cool plant. Looks like flock Christmas tree, with the silver curled needles, cool cones when those get a little bit older as well. If we look at arborvitae, there's a fire chief down the front here. You can see it's got a little touch of orange going on it. Arborvitae doesn't have to be our little green soldiers that we put in the row to use for a hedge. We can find a lot of cool texture arborvitaes with some fun color, a lot of yellows. This particular one will kind of be a limey color through the season and then take on that burnt orange look. I can shear it. It's really easy maintenance, but that's a fun one. And Japanese cedar, excuse me, I hope is a plant more people are discovering. That one is green. We just got a bunch more of them in here for the fall, but really different texture. That's almost got like a ropey needle. If you looked at one, you'd be like, oh, that's a little different. Almost looks a little tropical sometimes. But Japanese cedar is really easy to grow in our climate. And a lot of those will take, you can either choose ones that stay green all winter, or there's quite a few that will take color on, bronze, purple, of different colors as well. But again, not lose their needles. Blueberries. We're fortunate up here to be just warm enough where we can do some of the southern type blueberries. We sell an awful lot of both of those, Bountiful Blue and Sunshine Blue. In a typical winter, I'm going to get a turquoise purpley color on the foliage. It lasts all through the winter time. Then in spring, as they bloom, we drop our old leaves and then we get the new foliage out at that point too. They get great berries on them to eat as well, just like any blueberry, but that's kind of a fun, both those would be fun little foliage evergreens for some winter interest. Does anyone have Gravilia? No, that's not a plant you see around much. We try to get a bunch in here over winter and early spring. That's the perfect hummingbird magnet. Gravilia is a plant that blooms sometime through fall, winter, January, kind of depending on which one you choose. I'll warn you, be really careful if you're up in the hills, not the plant for you. If you're down near the water, sheltered in town, probably okay. I see plenty of them around gardens in Everett here and there. But if we get a nippy winter down there in the low teen single digits, Gravilia is a plant that will get nipped a little bit. That's not super hardy, about zone 8. Is what they say we are, but I try to stick with zone 7, it's a little bit safer. But there are some fun Gravilias if you want to try. I've had a couple over my years gardening. Typically put them in a pot. It's a great container specimen for a lot of years. Then if we do get cold, I can shove that container in the garage for a couple nights just to make sure I don't have any permanent damage. These would be really early spring. So these might be a couple that would help you for pollinator time. So if we take winter, I'm going to stick with the book and say we're up till March 22nd. There's your first day of spring. So we have a long time to get to that point. There's a lot of cool plants that technically bloom in the winter as we get into March. The Evergreen Barberries are a couple of them. And if you like bright orange, bright yellow, really easy, low maintenance plants. I'm an old dad with 2 young sons. Those nice thorns on there will make a great addition underneath the bedroom window here as they get into their teenage years. So those got some thorns on them. And that warty barberry has got a pretty good sized thorn on it. But they make a great hedge. You can clip it. The cool thing is the bloom plus winter color. So those won't lose their leaves, but they'll turn bright red. I'll have a burgundy red color on the foliage all winter. We get to spring, enjoy the flower, go back to green again. And if you need some thorns, right? So Camellia sasanqua, that's our winter camellia. So that would be the poster child for a large, specimen shrub that we can grow in that part shade to shade area that would start blooming here in November, December, January, February, into March, depending on the one we choose. Yeah, sometimes we get nippy when they're blooming. A couple flowers turn brown and drop. There's still plenty of buds that will bloom after those have dropped off. I've got a couple camellias and never had any issues with losing them in the wintertime. But that's a great one, kind of again, for that part sun, part shade. If you're looking for a nice big evergreen that is in full bloom in the winter at some point. Most of this Sanquas will start in the fall. We've got a great selection in now to choose from. You got Yuletides, your poster child one, the red Christmas flower, and it's always blooming at Christmas, right? But we can do pinks, whites, reds, singles, a couple doubles. If I was going to suggest one for you to look at, because again, I like all of them blooming, but I like foliage as well. There's a great one called Winter Snowman, if you like white, and that's got really pretty purplish new leaves on it too. So not only do I have winter bloom, nice clean plant, but I've got some really pretty new foliage come the next spring and summer as it's growing out after flowering. Strawberry tree is always a fun one, you know, a native of a relative of our native madrone, where I would have that peely kind of coppery orange bark is cool in the winter. They're evergreen. They love sun. It's not an edible strawberry. It looks like a strawberry. They're not poisonous or anything, but these bloom in the fall and then fruit over that winter time. So this is a plant right now. You'll be in prime time. Be careful with strawberry tree. That's a great example of a dwarf plant that's pretty good size. You know, strawberry tree would grow 20, 25 feet tall. So dwarf strawberry tree is about 10 or 12. So you're not going to keep a little strawberry tree in a, you know, little 2-foot pot for a long time. We're going to give him some room to grow. Some foliage stuff that's evergreen. You know, again, just a few suggestions like Mexican orange. You know, that's a great plant for the color that has fragrant flowers in like May, June, but over the winter, I've got yellow to lime color. So that's one that will give me some really cool foliage interest, I think. And I love Nandinas. You know, they call them heavenly bamboos. They don't have anything to do with bamboo. They call them heavenly. It's a different plant. But I could pick a lot of colors that I want to enjoy, from red to more purplish color to more coppery kind of earth tones. Nandina is going to give me that nice evergreen, easy plant, but have the color that I want as well in the winter and spring, summer, fall too. Azaleas and rhodies, you know, we all have those around. And I know when I planned my yard out, you know, 20 plus years ago at the house I'm at, I was like, yeah, I want a little bit of that. We all need some spring flower. But I was real particular on which ones I chose. You know, I bloom, you know, I can pick a bunch of different, there's 5,000 rhodies to choose from, for goodness sakes. You know, I'll find the yellow I want, you know, that's the color, but I was looking for foliage. So keep that in mind as you're choosing. You know, I think azalea is a really easy one. A lot of you come in here in the spring, you know, I just want a red blooming azalea. Sweet, there's probably 50 different varieties we could access around in our growers, but which one's for you? You know, they're all going to be about the same height. That's not going to matter much. The bloom time maybe a little bit, but if I'm choosing one, give me some winter color too. So I looked at something like Johanna. That's one I have in my yard. This got big red flower, just like all the nice spring azaleas do. But when I'm in the wintertime, the whole thing is a beautiful purple red color. It doesn't drop its leaves, but you can see that picture if it's clear enough in the snow. I've got a purple red evergreen shrub that goes back to green, you know, again in springtime. I've got another one that I like called Gerard's Purple, or Gerard's Fuchsia, is the one I have in my yard. Same thing, you know, it's green as can be for 9 months. Gives me a beautiful fuchsia purple flower when it blooms in April, May. Now this time of year, I've already got the burgundy and the purple coming in on the leaves, and that thing really looks nice against a green arborvitae hedge, you know, where I've got my plant. So look at some of the foliage colors. Same with rhododendron. You know, something like PJM is a really early bloomer for one, but two, I've got great foliage color on a PJM. I would turn that mahogany purplish color all through the winter, then right back to green in spring. Some Daphnes, you know, winter Daphne is a great fragrant option if you're looking for that February, March bloom. Evergreen, nice foliage. You can see my Jima there. There's a lot of good variegated ones out. We just got a new one in called Banana Split that makes me smile because they got some dumb names for plants these days, right? But there's quite a few cool variegated ones, and this is a plant they continue to breed and work on. You're always going to get that nice same flower with a great smell, but you know, when that's done blooming in 2 months, what am I looking at the rest of the year? And that's where they're trying to look for superior, consistent variegated forms of winter Daphne. Distilium may be a plant you haven't seen. Anyone have Distilium? A couple. So this is what it's in the witch hazel family, which we'll show here in a little bit for deciduous trees, but this is an evergreen witch hazel essentially. Distilium would bloom in December, January, little red spidery flowers on its wood like a witch hazel would, but I keep my leaves in the winter. You can find quite a few varieties of these now, and I don't use the word bulletproof very often, but that's a plant, honestly, I could probably grow sun, wet, shade, crappy soil, great soil. I can prune it, I can leave it, I can do whatever I want. It's a great filler plant. You know, I'm not a huge laurel guy. This would be a good laurel substitute. I can get taller ones and make a hedge. I can have something low. I can, you know, eat up some space on the ground. There's some really good varieties of Distilium out there these days. A couple of holly-like plants. I'm not a big English holly fan. You can probably find those all over the woods. They don't belong here, but that's going to give me my Christmas red berry. These are ones that would look like hollies again, but not give me the berries to produce more plants, but give me some cool foliage. So holly-leaved osmanthus, like goshiki. We've got party lights, some really fun ones out there where I'm going to have really nice variegation would be an option. Or something like scallywag. We call that the pirate holly here. But that one's a little small ornamental holly that turns purple. So if I'm looking for a cool little shrub, I've used them in my pots before over the winter, where the thing is green, 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 and then the wintertime, just a beautiful deep purple color, but doesn't lose its foliage again. Sarcococa. Now that's not one of the questions I'll ask you. You don't have to spell that. That's a tough one for me to spell after 30 years, but Sarcococa we call sweet box is a real easy way to remember that. I think that's one of the best winter plants. Everybody should have Sarcococa in their yard. I've got quite a few. I know most people do. When these bloom in that January, February, March time frame, your whole yard will smell like sweet vanilla. It's got great smell. You don't see the flowers much, but you'll sure smell them. The biggest difference for you as a gardener and looking at Sarcococa is I like shade or part shade. I don't want all afternoon sun. I can take some sun, it's not that, but this is a great shade plant option. And pick your height. I put two of them on there. Humilis is going to be the low one, you know, shin, knee level kind of thing. Russifolia is going to be big as me, 6 feet tall. The other one I didn't put on there is a triple slide is Confusa. Now I've got something kind of about 3 or 4 feet in between, so I can kind of choose 3 different heights, 3 different growth habits. They're easy to prune, really easy to grow, but pick the right one for you, because I have some people go say, I want Sarcococa, and they buy the Russifolia, and they're looking for a nice little low, you know, plant by the entrance of the house, not something that grew 6 feet tall and got long branches on it. So that's a definitely one to explore today. A couple others here. Scarletta is a variety of Leucothoe. So that picture is from the winter. You know, that's a plant that has always got a little bit of red on it in the growing season. But again, once you start getting frosty nights, the whole thing just glows like burning bush purple red through the entire winter, doesn't lose its leaves. Then off we go for spring, back to green, nice little flower in the springtime. That's a native or nativar. Leucothoe is a plant, coastal Leucothoe we would find in the Pacific Northwest. That's a man-made variety that kind of more ornamental for the landscape. This is a plant I have, the Mahonias. There's a lot of hybrid Mahonias out these days. If you don't know that, Oregon grape, you know, would be the name. That's a native plant. And I have no problem with you plant native Oregon grape. That's a cool plant for the winter too. Some of these would be earlier bloomers. So this is one I put in just for the hummingbirds. Like, sweet, you want some nectar in November, December? I've got soft cress. You know, that's one that blooms late fall, early winter, and would give me the bright yellow flowers with that excellent nectar for the hummingbirds to eat. Plus, that one's got some cool foliage, and it's not pokey like the rest of them. Then we have something like Dark Star. That would be more like a native one, a little bit lower. That would be blooming like in February, March, you know, coming out of winter. And then something like Charity. We get quite a few varieties of big, tall, media cross type Mahonias like Charity, Arthur Menzies. Winter Sun is one we have out there. That's a big plant. You know, I want to make sure if you choose that, that's an impressive specimen to have in the yard for this time of year, for all year. But that's going to bloom like December, January, dead of the winter time, but get 8 10 feet tall. So that's a big specimen plant to put at the back of the garden and then use some other things out in front of it. So that one, I've even seen some guys even turn that into kind of a small tree, you know, not a ever a 20-foot type tree, but a you know, a 10 or 12-foot tree, get you on an old plant. Sun or shade, I wouldn't go deep dark shade, but like the ideal spot for almost all those mahonies, to be honest, would be half and half. You know, if you had half day sun, half day shade would be perfect. Couple more broadleaves here. Gala. I might have a few of those left. We get a bunch of those in February before they bloom. That's kind of in the pea family. Great fragrance. Not a plant you probably see around a lot, but it's an easy little low, kind of clumpy perennial. It's always going to give you that kind of purple and gold husky flower if you like the huskies. So that's one we get fragrance on and very low maintenance. It doesn't, you know, it's not that it's unattractive when it's not blooming, but it doesn't look super special here in the fall, but you will really enjoy it winter, spring, summer. It kind of peters out a little bit late summer and then boom, right back into action here when it cools off. That's low. You'd be less than a foot. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a little low, kind of not a ground cover, but it kind of spreads in a little patch like that. Pieris is one, you know, I don't know what it is about Pieris. Everybody probably's had one. Most yards you drive by got one somewhere. But there's something cool when you look at that in the winter and you see the big flower buds, you know, kind of hanging there like, okay, spring's coming here someday, you know, when it gets kind of gray and rainy. So that's one I like for that. You know, you got your buds are set in the summer. So all those buds are hanging there to enjoy for the next year all through the winter. You know, I put that one up again because of variegation. If you ignore the flower, which is going to come out in March, you know, April, we got some pretty leaves on a lot of these new ones like Passion Frost, Passion Party. I can choose white flower, red flower, pink flower, whatever I want. But I've got a really nice variegated leaf and some really cool new growth color as well. There's a lot of fun. Pierre is probably the one I used to put on as an old one called Flaming Silver. Anybody got that one? That's one everybody comes in here looking for late winter because of the foliage color. Heathers, we got them on special out there. The heaths are on special. They're just about to start blooming. You know, that's a great one again for bees, pollinator, and frankly, winter color. You know, heather's pretty indestructible to use for full sun and not a lot of water. The key with these are shear them in spring. So when they're done blooming in March or April, we just cut those back just a little bit to keep them nice and tight and maximize the flower every year. Most people who look at me like, ugh, heather, I'm not buying one of those again. It's because they probably walked away and either watered it too much or let it go for 10 years. And then we got the donut, you know, the brown center with all my little frosting of growth on the outside. So if you very lightly shear them, you'll look like the magazines and what you see in gardens, you know, big, thick mounds, nice and low, and you won't see any of that wood in there. So the Kramer's Road is the dark one, but you'll see Mediterranean. Those are all the Ericas or the Heaths. Those are more Irish style heather. On the left, there's Firefly. So that's a Scotch heather or Kaluna. Those ones are not blooming in the winter, but I get the foliage color. I've got one up here. I'll show you. But that way I get oranges, reds, yellows, bold foliage, summer flower on those. So I like both of them in the winter. Both are interesting, but if I want flower, make sure you go for the Ericas, and that's what I've got on a special out there for $7.50 too. We're running a special on those. Now we'll do some deciduous stuff for fall color. Now I won't breeze through here because there's a lot of them. We're not going to finish here in time. But if we look at hydrangeas, you know, if you walked out there right now, this minute, you're going to see flower on hydrangeas still. And it's not going to stop until we get a hard frost. Some people leave their dried flowers in the winter. Some people, interesting. I tend to deadhead mine to get them off of there in the fall. You can do it either way. But plants like oak leaf hydrangeas, spectacular fall color, and they would still be blooming. PG hydrangeas are unbelievable. There's huge flowers that open white. This time of year, they're more dark pink to red. You got a question? We have a bunch here. They didn't find them for you? I'll show you after class. Yeah. Oh, I think we've got some decent ones. She brought one in here. We'll look after class. Yeah. So check out what's up. Yep. Probably watering a little bit too much. And it might, not be there quite yet. We haven't had, the weather's been unbelievable. In the pots out here, you know, I'll kind of smile and I'll call it nursery disease. It's not a disease, but anyone who's around a nursery knows if I have a shrub and I'm growing a little gallon pot, it's going to get tired early. It goes back to the first thing I said. Dry summer, our landscape, some things are going dormant early. So I'm going to probably have much more superior fall color on my oak leaf hydrangeas right now than you would in the yard because they're a little bit more drought stress being in a pot. So shut the water down a little bit. Yeah, one. Uh-huh. Well, yeah. So real quick is when we'll do this, we'll do all the questions after so I can get done here. But if she asked about hydrangeas and how to prune. So PG hydrangea blooms all on new wood. So I don't have to worry about whatever I do to it. Oak leaf only blooms on old wood. So if I cut it back hard, it's not going to hurt the plant, but I'm going to sacrifice some bloom. The round mop head hydrangeas, I don't think I put one on here. Those are a little bit of both, and you'd have to tell me your variety. Almost all the new stuff for the last 20 years blooms on new and old wood. So again, I can do whatever I want to prune. But if you've had hydrangea and you pruned it back and didn't get flower the next year, you've got old wood bloomer. And it's not the end of the world. It just means like, all right, I got to be a little more careful how far I go back, or maybe I let it go for 2-3 years, sacrifice 1 year, and then I'm back in business kind of thing. But that's the only way you're probably going to find out which one you have anyway, is prune it back and see what happens. Some berry stuff for fall. Remember, I'm asking questions after this, so some of these are going to be some of your answers here. So there's a couple different types. We have native snowberry around here, and we carry snowberry off and on if you're strictly native. But we're looking for nativars again. You keep using that word. I teach a class every year on kind of native cultivars. I want heavier berry and maybe a nicer looking plant that's disease resistant, doesn't get as many issues as some of the natives do, to be honest. So these are two options that I think are outstanding. I don't know if we brought one in, or we'll show you one after class. But Candy and Galaxy are two Symphyocarpus in that snowberry family with huge berries set in the fall. I mean, if you have one of these right now, it is covered with those berries here as we turn for fall. Birds will forage a little bit. Wildlife's happy. You know, we get to December, they go brown, drop on the ground, we're done. We'll see you again next year, you know, kind of thing. But if for fall, you know, for that August when they start to bloom all the way through the fall season, that's a great shrub. Aronia, same way. That's the choke cherry. You know, now we're not stuck with a 20-foot leggy choke cherry like the old fashions were. Excuse me. A lot of the new ones, much lower, much tidier. University of Maine has brought out a bunch of varieties of these low scape, low hedge, low mound, these new types of choke cherries or aronias that are great for landscapes. You know, fabulous fall colors. They always have had that. We get nice spring. That's a picture from spring, so that would bloom white. And then this time of year, I would have the berries on there. They would be jet black, like a really cool dark color on those. And again, for the wildlife and the birds. Sumac's probably not for everybody. Anybody got sumac in their yard? You probably got a whole bunch of sumac if you have. I've had sumac before at a place in Eastern Washington, and it likes to grow. We'll just leave it at that. It's pretty big, probably at the top of the list for fall color. You know, this is a native to Eastern Washington, Idaho, hot, dry, really easy to grow. And it can contain it by doing some pruning. It's an easy thing to prune. But we just carry Tiger Eyes as a variety we get here. That picture is not fall, that's in the summer. So it's always got bright gold, lime color. That'll turn orange red in the fall here as it drops. And if you know sumac, that kind of look like, used to call them staghorn most of the time, staghorn, because they look like antlers. You know, when they go dormant and all leaves are gone, I've got fuzzy, clumpy wood that pops up. They've got cool little berry clusters on them when you get old too. But kind of a cool texture plant. Yeah, a little bit different, but they will spread. I'll just say that as I smile. Be careful where you put them. Contorted filbert, you know, is always one that we have in the fall, winter. We try to keep them year round. They've been really hard to get last couple years, to be honest with you. We got some in. I got more coming here over winter. But that's one that's going to give me twisted wood. Is really interesting. Then that blooms in February, March. You get the little catkins hang down, so it blooms in the winter. Then I get some cool foliage during the season. This isn't filbert nut production. We would get a different type of filbert for that, but this would be the ornamental type filbert. Big, specimen shrub. This isn't a little, 2-3 foot thing. I'm giving my Filbert, probably 8 or 10 feet of space to develop into a really nice specimen. The one thing I'd say real quick on that is be real careful with what Filbert you choose and where you live. Filbert blight comes out of our native type Filberts into a lot of yards, and the old-fashioned green Filbert. I've lost one years ago at my house. I helped volunteer at our Arboretum in North Everett. We've lost both of our old ones that have been there for 30 plus years. There's no cure for Filbert blight. So the answer is this, if you live by Greenville, I'd be real cautious planting a green one. The reason I put Black Dragon on there is it's got cool purple leaves, which are different than more green. And that one is immune to Filbert blight. So if you're going to ask and you want to add one, ask me, the staff, well, is this immune to Filbert blight? Because we try to get a couple in that will not get that disease now. Oregon State spent a lot of years down in Filbert country developing these over 30 years, because if we were doing this class in the Willamette Valley, they would not let you have a Filbert in your yard because it would transfer the disease into the Filbert nut orchards down there. So that's kind of a fun one, thanks to the beeves, right? The beaver believers. Pink Dawn Viburnum, we have some of these in now, and that's a great fall color plant. Turn beautiful bright red burgundy here in the fall. And that one starts to bloom in November and blooms all through the winter into March off and on. That's super fragrant. If you like light pink, that's got great smell. Again, that's a specimen shrub, not a little plant we're going to tuck in a pot or put by the front door, but something we're going to use in the yard as a 10-foot specimen as it develops. That's a nice big plant with some really cool winter interest. Chinese paper bush. Don't come up and hit me because I don't have any yet, but we're trying to find them. That's a hard plant to find. Edgeworthia, I probably have a waiting list from 12 people already over the course of the year. I hope we get a bunch because those will probably be gone pretty quick. That's a plant native to China. It's what they used to make paper from years and years ago. But it blooms in January, February, bright yellow. You can find orangey red ones as well. But it smells great and it blooms in the dead of winter. That one is for shade. We do not plant paper bush out in any kind of hot afternoon sun. We can have morning sun or an afternoon shade for sure. And that's a big specimen shrub, probably 8 feet by 8 feet when I get a nice old mature paper bush. Easy thing to prune a little bit. It's very soft wood coming out of winter. We would prune it back if we wanted to, but nice yellow fall color. And the flower is really cool in the wintertime. When these bloom here in the winter, a lot of people, when we have them, a lot of people are like, what is that? I've never seen anything like it. It's excellent fragrance. Cordialopsis is the one on the right there. Buttercup winter hazel. There's spike winter hazels. That's not witch hazel. We'll do that in a minute. This is a little different plant. We've got a big buttercup up on the corner of one of our gardens up on the front of the road out there. And in February and March, when it's blooming, here come the emails and the phone calls. I drove by the nursery. What is that thing you got blooming out in front there? It's a cool plant. If you like yellow again, it blooms with no wood on it. And then we get the foliage on after that as well. Gilla, I don't know why that one's always had a soft spot in my heart, and it always will. I got one in my yard, and I'm surprised more people don't look for Gilla. If I was to rate the 5 best fall color plants, that would be in those 5 for sure, no matter what list I was talking about anywhere. I think the fall color is outstanding. That gets a fragrant white flower on it in May as well. It's a really easy plant to grow. It kind of looks native-y, it's not native around here, but it looks native kind of the way it grows. But I think if you like fall color, that is one to really kind of contemplate whether you should add one, because that's at the top of the list. Hypericum, I got one right here still blooming. Coming out. This is kind of a new generation. I don't know if anyone's got St. John's wort, that old, no offense, old ratty ground cover that kind of takes over everything. There's nothing wrong with it. It serves a purpose, but this is the same family, but they would call floral berries. So I know I try to buy my sweetie some flowers once in a while, my wife, and this is something they'll charge an astronomical amount to tuck in my fall arrangement every time. So it's fun to grow. A lot of people growing these are using them for arrangements in the fall. They can cut a stem, pop it in an arrangement. Pumpkin's orange, we get red. You could pick any color in the rainbow, literally from white all the way to black. and you can find a floral berry with that color berry in it as well. So yellow flower late summer, and then we get those berries on here for a little bit of fall interest. Japanese beautyberry. If you like purple, I brought one up. He's just about to turn purple, but if you like purple berries here in the fall, that's about as cool as it gets too. These will continue to develop. They bloomed in summer, so these will turn to a shiny metallic kind of purple color. It's a really bright berry. When this turns yellow, drops its leaves, you're left with those bright purple clusters on there in November and December. Sometimes the birds grab a couple of them, and you'll see those glowing, and then they'll drop off later in the winter, start over again next year. But that's if you like purple berries, that's about as cool as it gets. They call that Japanese beautyberry. Yes. That one we could do some shade on. I wouldn't go deep dark shade. We won't get as much bloom or berry, but that's another one. Full sun or part sun would be ideal. Yeah. On the right there's some 9-bark. That's actually a picture from when we had heavy snow a couple years ago at my house. And 9-bark's a fun plant. If you haven't tried those, really cool foliage colors all through the season. You know, they look dead as doornails in the winter. You know, they don't have any leaves on them, but really cool bark. I mean, that's a plant kind of like a little mini birch almost. If you've got a 9-bark, I've got 2 different ones at my place now. If you look at it, I'll see all that peely, cool exfoliating bark through the wintertime. They're super, super hardy, like down to 30 below zero. So it may look like that's never going to grow again. And here comes spring and brand new leaves come out and off we go. That's a fun one. There's some dwarf and some tall ones. 9-bark, you know, probably 4 or 5 feet, your short version, you know, and 6 or 8 feet, your tall version. So that's a little bit bigger plant. Some twig color. So twig dogwoods are native up here, really easy to grow, especially if you've got wet. You know, that's an easy one to grow. If I kind of meandered over in the neighborhoods here to the ditches and the wetland, I'd find red twig dogwood growing, doing just fine, even in the dry summer. You can find a lot of varieties of these around. You know, the twig color, I'm choosing yellow. I'm choosing midwinter fire, which gives me the orangey tone in there, or a zillion different red ones. So I can pick any 3 colors I like. The choice to me would be, all right, I like that color in the winter, but what do I want it to look like in the summer? So a lot of these we can find variegated versions, we can find gold foliage versions, or we can stick with just green. I don't care. It's your yard, not mine, right? So we can find some options with twig dogwoods. I have quite a few of these in my place. I love coming home in the winter. For me, if I was giving you my Trevor tip, you know, I took a yellow, a red, and an orange years ago, planted 3 foot apart in a little triangle on my bank, and I just let them do whatever they want. Excuse me. So when I have no leaves and I drive home in the wintertime, drive up to my driveway and I'm looking at yellow, orange, red twigs everywhere. You know, this looks cool. The birds can hang out in there and hide a little bit. I have another red one in my garden, which I shear. Everybody knows at Sunnyside we make fabulous wreaths here all winter. That's our thing for Christmas. So I will harvest my red one for wreath making. So my wife will take some down here to make ours. I usually throw another bucket in here for customers to use. But because I shear it, I get the young growth is the brightest color. Now here in the winter, I'll have a beautiful twig harvest, you know, a foot and a half long twigs, cut off all the bright red. Next year, we'll do it again. Now that's my witch hazel I took a few years ago inside my fence. And witch hazel, I think, is a great winter blooming tree. And I don't mean tree like I need 30 feet to grow it. You know, that should give you scale. I planted that 22 years ago, and it was about 6 feet tall when I planted it. And I've still got probably a 9-10 foot tall plant by 8 foot across, and I've never topped it or butchered it. I don't do that to my plants anyway, but it doesn't need a lot of pruning. Arnold Promise is the bright yellow one that's fragrant. If you like the smell, you know, this is one I love looking out my sliding door at the back of the house and seeing this in full bloom after Christmas every single year like clockwork. Doesn't matter how cold it is, doesn't matter if it rains, doesn't matter. I've always got really good, reliable yellow flower. Add to that, you know, this would be another one I'd probably put in the top 5 of all the fall colored plants to me. Really nice fall color on any variety of witch hazel as well. So yellow's fragrant. I didn't put all three of them in here, but if you maybe you don't last smells okay, but I'm not out in my yard very much to smell it. Orange and red we can do as well. We have all three colors in now. Great fall color, all nice bloomers, just wouldn't have the fragrance on the other two. Cornelian Cherry, you know, that's a Cornus moss. That's a plant that we borrowed from our friends in England years ago. But that's a variety of dogwood that blooms yellow in like late February, March. And that actually gets a long little red cherry, develops on that late in the season. They're not very tasty. I think they do something with them over there in a dessert. I haven't found anything I like to eat them with yet, but it's a cool plant. You know, it's another one. We have a big specimen of that in our garden over here. And a lot of people that are in here in February, March go, what is that yellow blooming tree? It looks so cool down there. And this year we will have a little bit more for sale. It's not the easiest plant to find. Japanese maples. You know, I like all maples in the winter. I got a bunch in my yard, big, small, and every size in between. And they don't have to have bark color to look cool when they're dormant. But if I was going for strictly bark color, here's a couple suggestions like Bihu. I got one in here somewhere. I'll pull up after class. That would be they call beautiful mountain range in Japan. Going to be yellow to kind of orangey coral color bark on that. That's one we have to have in shade. We don't plant Bihu in afternoon sun. Morning sun's okay. That's a great container tree. That's where mine was for years. But that's a slow growing with really cool bark. Coral bark's the one you see everywhere. And I would just say this, I don't want to make you believe it's a hard tree to grow, but it's probably the hardest one to keep healthy in our wet weather. A lot of people struggle with coral bark, pseudomonas, root rots because they don't have good drainage. That's a must for maple, and it's an absolute must for coral barks. Be careful which variety you choose, because these days, you know, I could pick coral bark that grows 25 feet. I could pick that grows 20. I could pick a 15. I could pick a 10. You know, I could pick a number of different varieties of coral bark to give me the plant size I want. Most people go straight for the 25-foot tree and then come back in 10 years like, this is way too big. What am I going to do? So pick your variety, because we tend to carry a lot of cool dwarf and semi-dwarf coral barks here as well. And I think we've still got some. Some larger trees. If you looked at birch, excuse me, who's got birch around? Anybody got a birch tree? Nothing prettier than white peely bark in the winter, right? So Himalayan white birch is a cool tree. There's a paper birch, there's Himalayan white birch, European birch. We got an 80-footer over at the house there if you want to see a 100-year-old one. That's a big plant. You know, give that some room to grow. It's a big root system, but very cool bark in the wintertime with the white. I would put Stewartia again in my top 5 plant list. I wish more people had the patience, is probably the word, to grow Stewartia, because it grows slow. They're not cheap because they grow slow. But man, if I was picking one tree for all 4 seasons, it would be Stewartia. If you haven't seen that tree, look at the fall color right now. They bloom in the summer. Great bark on them when you get an old Stewartia. You can see on that picture almost like eucalyptus a little bit. It's a fun tree. And pick your species. There's narrow ones. They all get into trees. There's no miniature one. But, you know, Korean Stewartia might get 20 feet tall, where Japanese Stewartia is going to get 40 feet tall. So give it some room to grow and pick the right one. I think most people that I've talked into trying Stewartia, it's probably their favorite tree in their yard. Because, again, I think it does something in all 4 seasons. It's a really easy and fun tree to grow up here. Paperbark maple. You know, if you want to say, I don't like white, maybe you get too much snow, you're up in the hills, I can't see it as much, but I want some contrast. You know, paperbark maple is Acer gricium. That's a specific species. We get a few different cultivars of it in. Really cool bark. You know, that's going to give me the cinnamon, peely, exfoliating bark that looks cool all winter, all through all growing seasons, and great red fall color. And probably for a species maple, you know, that's not a huge tree. I think most people think, you know, I want a shade tree. You know, they're up there 30, 40 feet. You can get paper barks down there more like 20, 25 feet in size, and much more manageable for a typical yard these days. I just got a bunch more in. Pacific Fire Vine Maple has been one of the more popular trees around here. You know, say you want to go native, you like the vine maples that we have, but you're like, give me something a little more. You know, Pacific Fire is going to give you bark color on exactly the same thing. So, you know, ours are in pots. They look a little tired, you know, because they've been in pots all summer. But if you look at ignore the foliage and look at the wood, I've got, again, that yellowy gray to coral color on the wood, like I would on a Japanese maple, but now I'm on a probably a little easier to grow, you know, vine maple if I'm worried a little bit more about drainage. And I want to stay kind of more native in my yard. Look at the Pacific Fire. That's a great cultivar of our native vine maple. Now, if we look at some flower power, I think they brought a couple in here. You know, there's really only one thing. You know, I'm not interested in breaking my wallet every year. I probably used to buy way too many flowers and swapped them out in the fall. And I'm like, this is just too much. So I do a lot of my pots with mixed stuff, you know, permanent things, add a little color. Pansies and violas are the only thing you're going to come in right now, add to your pots, put in the window box, you know, put on the doorstep, wherever you plant them, that I don't really care how cold we get. They're always going to be there in the winter. I mean, I've seen mine shrivel up like frozen ice cubes. Like, there's no way that's coming back out of this. 3 days later, it thaws. It's like, oh, there's another flower coming out. So, you know, my problem, I'll speak for me, is I always wait too long to get my pansies. I already did them this year because I wrote myself a note. But get them pretty quick, because we can't get much more of them here pretty soon. And if you can get them in the fall, you know, I got all my window boxes. I got containers at the doorstep. I'll add them here and there. And I don't go buy hundreds of them. I think I bought 40, you know, pansies. It'll keep me smiling all winter because I'll have some flowers around to enjoy. So lots of cool pansies. And every year, that's one of those flowers they come out with. Oh, look at that. It's got cute stripes on it. And that's got a nice face. And you can find all kinds of pansies. I can guarantee if you walk up there and look at pansies, you'll find one like, there's my colors right there, because they got a rainbow. Like I said, we're doing bulbs tomorrow, so I won't spend a lot of time on bulbs. But if we talk strictly winter, you know, I'm going to show you a couple things I use a lot of. One is crocus. You know, I think crocus is really easy to do. We have some of this orange one left. If you don't get them today, I'll probably take them all tomorrow for my class, because I usually buy all those up every year. But crocus we can do in whites, lavenders, purples. The orange one's kind of a little different and newer. But I just have a short, tiny little bulb like ground cover. You know, don't plant 3 of them and think you're going to be happy. You know, pile a bag. You know, do 15 of them here, a little chunk here. You know, almost every maple in my yard, I probably have 1,000 crocus all over the place. Because when I planted them years ago, it's like, sweet. Not that they need shade, but in the wintertime when they're growing, you know, I've got a deciduous plant. I got full sun essentially, and I don't like to watch them die off. You know, most people's issue with bulbs, if you're like me, is I don't want to watch you turn brown for 2 months before you go dormant, and I can't pull you out because then you won't grow again and all the rest of it. Sweet, plant them underneath a maple. I've got lace leaves with 100 crocus underneath it. I come home in March, February, March, I got full bloom on the ground. Then my tree leaves out. I'll see you next year. You know, I don't have to look at the crocus as they yellow out, and they've got plenty of water and everything they need underneath there. And they come back again the next year, kind of thing. So I tuck those a lot of places in my yard. The other one is aconite. And I don't think a lot of people have discovered the value of winter aconites. Again, just a tiny little short bulb, 3-4 inches out of the ground is all. That's blooming like Christmas, you know, January, the first thing up in my yard every year, like clockwork. I'll give Mr. Smith, the previous owner here, credit for those, because the first year I worked here 12 years ago, we're looking at his garden, and I'm like, what do you got growing underneath there? And he's like, oh, you don't have aconites? You should try some of those. Can't tell you how many bags I planted, probably 50 bags of them in my yard the last 12 years. Because everybody's got shade. You know, they don't need any sun at all. I mean, these are things I've got in the deep, dark shade because, again, they come up. I get to have carpets of bright yellow flowers for 4-6 weeks in the dead of winter. Then they got cool little foliage, and by the time June comes, they're dormant. I'll see you again next year. You know, don't be alarmed if you go buy some aconites. Like, what's he selling me? Dead raisins? They look like little tiny shriveled up, like dehydrated dead raisins. They don't look like a bulb. But I'm telling you, you pop them in. And again, I wouldn't, oh, let's put 3 here and 1 here. It's not that. Find a little patch, you know, put a whole bunch of them in. It'll naturalize, make a really easy way to grow them. Early daffodils, and again, more of the ones I use. You know, I'm not into this daffodil. I want that little daffodil, you know, that is a little more reliable to come back year after year. They naturalize much better. If you're at the class tomorrow, I'll probably say the word naturalize 1,000 times. But I'm looking to spend money on something I have and not, you know, I buy some tulips and things. It's like, sweet, I'll cut those and put them in a bouquet or enjoy them for the season in a pot. And, you know, I'm probably not going to come back again. But these kinds of things I want back year after year after year. So dwarf daffodils like Jetfire, teditates is probably the most common thing you're going to see anywhere, you know, around here coming out of wintertime. We go through a zillion of those. We have a bunch in the bulb form, which is way cheaper than buying them in February when they're blooming. So some short daffodils, and then kind of some different spring ephemerals like snowdrops, snowflakes. Again, you've got shade, part shade. You're looking for something that comes up early, gives you a little color. These are, again, January, February bloomers that don't care how cold it is or if it's raining sideways day after day. They're still coming. You know, it's still a happy time for them. The last thing, just a few perennials here. So if we talk fall, has anyone in here tried Lookinginia? So that's a plant, you know, probably 8 years ago, I would have said, huh? Say that again. It sounds something like awful. It's really kind of growing on me. We go through a lot of these in the fall. Nothing in the winter. I want to make sure that's clear. We melt like a hosta, turn to snot. We kind of scrape it up and recycle it, but it comes back every spring. But this thing looks like a Japanese maple ground cover in the fall. I mean, that literally is a picture from like October, November. I mean, it is bright crimson. It's got great texture. It's a really cool fall plant if you like that season. That's a great shade, little kind of perennial. Doesn't get very tall. You know, so it's just a short little plant, but would naturalize into a nice little ground cover. I've got a few of those at my place now. Anemones, probably for a blooming perennial, tend to last quite a bit into the fall. Wild swan, I don't even know if we have that one left. We got other ones just like that. There's still some nice anemones down there. Wallflowers I put on for the opposite end of winter. So anyone do wallflowers? You know, wallflowers kind of made their way north out of California a little more. I think we're warm enough. I would never worry about losing any for temperature, but these need good drainage. I should say that twice. Need good drainage. If you put this in clay or somewhere wet, you're never going to see it come back up again after the winter. If you've got good drainage or pots even, this is one that comes up really early for a perennial, and I could pick any color in the rainbow with fragrance a lot of times. You know, those are blooming in March and April and then going on through the season after that point. So this is one you'd have to mark a little note on your cheat sheet. Do I have a bunch of wallflowers now? No, but if you were down here coming once a week to shop, you'll see them again probably mid-February starting next year as we go into spring. Yeah, pretty short. Yeah, not super tall. Yeah, most of the wallflowers are the best new ones, all that winter sun, winter party, all that stuff, really nice and compact. Yeah, easy. Anyone who knows me knows I'm the member and the president of the Heucheraitis addiction to Heuchera fan club around here. I'll joke a lot about heucheras at our Evergreen perennial class in November, but you know, I'll be honest, if I was looking for any color in the rainbow, something evergreen, I could pop in a pot, plant on the border. I mean, we can go black, purple, variegated, pink, rose, orange, anything you want. You can find a heuchera or heucherella with that color you're looking for. I don't have any ever disappear in the winter. I mean, in our climate, these are definitely evergreen, but I think look pretty sharp in the winter. If you take care of them right, that should give you years of enjoyment for the foliage color. Clay, yeah. Heuchera is very drought tolerant. I taught my sons an experiment, and I took a little piece of one in the midsummer, which you should never do. I threw it over in my son's new garden we planted for him, and it looks great. It's like, wow. He's like, Dad, that plant looks awesome. I was like, I told you, a little bit of water, get it going, and it'll live there forever now. So hellebores, again, you know, we'll talk about this a lot at the November class. We started getting in hellebores pretty heavy here. That's a popular plant over the winter. I mean, they call that Christmas rose, Lenten rose, you can call it whatever you want, but this is blooming starting in the fall, and we would have color on hellebores all the way through April come spring. So choose your variety that you like. Some are more geared for that October, November, December time. Other ones are more geared for that January, February, March time. Don't care how cold we get. I've had mine buried in a foot of snow, and as soon as it melted, oh, look, there's the flowers still sitting there ready to go. This is not going to worry about any kind of winter temperature, but nice evergreen foliage and some outstanding flowers. I mean, we could do the same kind of as hooker with bloom. We could make a kaleidoscope of Hellebore flowers, and they're at the point of driving me crazy, those two, because every year there's another 10 new ones, and every year I got to try to find somewhere to plant a new one. So there's a couple Hellebores. The one thing I'd say, maybe if you're going to go look at some Hellebores today, is, you know, flowers come and go. I mean, there's some great bloomers out there, doubles, singles, the color you want. Look at the foliage, because man, the last 5 years, there's some really cool mottled leaves, a lot of cool subtle variegation. So even when it's not blooming, it's like, wow, that's a cool plant, you know, that I could have in a pot or in my garden. The other thing I'd say with Hellebores is, you don't have to be in deep dark shade. I think most people consider that a super shade plant. It will do shade, but you can have a lot of sun on Hellebores, and they don't need very much water. So expand your Hellebore horizons. You can plant them some new areas. Love epimediums the same way. We've started getting in. This is a pink blooming one here. He's not doing anything too exciting yet. But as we get cold, those are going to turn red, and they don't lose their leaves. So epimedium's a plant that's evergreen, will turn red in the fall. We get to February, I'll see my flowers popping in and out of the foliage on there. We'll enjoy some flower, pinks, yellows. We can find a lot of cool varieties of epimediums. And then we get the green foliage back. So once a year, that's not every year for me, but probably every 3 years, I'll walk out in January, set the hedge clippers on the ground, and cut my patches of epimedium off. Like, you know, sometimes like, what have you done to me? I just took everything down to the ground. Now I can really see the flowers. I got all brand new foliage, and I got a brand new plant. So you don't even have to probably do it every 3 years, but I'm kind of OCD, so I like a fresh look every couple of years. It's not crazy spreading invasive, but that's deep dark shade, loves dry, underneath trees. It's a great plant. If you've got underneath old evergreens that don't get a lot of water, that's a really good drought tolerant, deep shade plant. So that's the kind of stuff I got in the corners of my shade garden, against the fence, behind everything. Oh, wow, I forgot you were back there. This doesn't need much water, you know, really easy maintenance. Euphorbias, same good drought tolerance, but some outstanding foliages. If you like spurge, you know, these will bloom coming out of winter, some interesting flowers on them. Be careful, they do go to seed a little bit. If you're not careful, you might have some free euphorbias you can share with some neighbors. But euphorbia is a fun plant. You know, it's one I use a lot in pots myself. I haven't done as much in the garden, but it can go in a nice sunny, well-drained spot. We're using them in a nice sunny container as well for year-round interest. Look at your variety tags. Most of that stuff's just going to be foot and a half. They're not super tall. Grasses, I think, is the last one here. You know, and again, I think all grasses look great in the fall. You know, I've got a lot of ornamental grasses in my yard, turning color right now. We got plumage coming out. Some of those will go dormant, you know, go brown here as we start to get frost, and I can cut them off if I want, or I can leave them for the frost. This is more evergreen stuff. So again, little evergreen foliage grasses that I can pop in my containers or use in the garden and borders where I can have some nice color through the winter. These are two from my yard I have all over the place. I love the ever lime. That does some shade. So if you, excuse me, if you were at my house in Everett right now, you probably still wouldn't even notice them, to be honest with you. But after the hydrangea goes dormant and the sneezeweed perennials died to the ground, all the rest of this, like, oh, wow, look at that. There's lime grasses planted underneath that garden there. It looks sweet all through the winter. Orange sedge would give me kind of that. Again, both these are short. These are not big plants, but orange sedge is one of my favorite grasses, period. I use these a lot in pots, which means when the pot gets redone, it goes into my yard. I probably couldn't count how many orange sedges I have in different parts of the landscape at this point. But it just like the color. It's nice and easy and short. Again, pretty good drought tolerance on that one. But the biggest thing is evergreen. If I go deciduous grass, you know, here's a couple, maybe we have lots of cool grasses out there still, but here's maybe two I put on here that you haven't seen before. Has anyone done big blue stem or little blue stem? These are both, I think, outstanding grasses. I've got both in my yard now. Standing Ovation, I think, might be the nicest grass of all for perennials. Blues, purples, grays, reds. It's been in full color since midsummer, and I've got my seeds out on mine now. And that's not a huge grass, maybe something 3 foot tall. On the right, the Andropogon is the big blue stem. I'm going to go purple, and I want it up there about 6 feet tall. So I want a big old specimen grass. I'm going to look at something like big blue stem. You know, I've got miscanthus. I got all kinds of fun tall grasses around, but that one gets me color a little bit earlier. And it's super, both those, again, super drought tolerant if you got full sun and don't want to water much. The last couple perennials here, short, wintergreen. You know, wintergreen's a plant right now. You probably got maximum selection on cool wintergreen varieties here over the winter. Short, evergreen. You know, when I do container class, we call it the thriller, the filler, and the spiller. You know, we got something cool, something to fill it up, and something to spill on the container. Wintergreen make a great winter spiller if you want something that lasts through the winter, keeps its leaves. And we've just finished blooming. The berries are just coming out now for the winter season. It's also where we get our wintergreen gum from, right? So we can do cherry berries, big berries on that one. There's variegated ones now. You can get pink berries now if you like a little different color. But there's some fun wintergreens out there. And then cyclamen. You know, I saved this one of the best for last. So a lot of people come in here for 9 or 10 months asking, where's your cyclamen? Where's your cyclamen? Where's your cyclamen? You cannot find cyclamen at a nursery except for right now through the winter time. So we got a bunch of it in just like 2 weeks ago, like probably a couple hundred plants up there. This is one that goes dormant in the summertime. So you're not going to buy it when it looks like a dead pot, right? That's why we don't carry it in the summer. You know, it's got cool foliage you can see from the pictures there, and they start blooming now. The ones up there, you'll see flowers out, and these will go on off and on all the way through fall into the winter with the foliage. Once we get warm and dry, that's when we go dormant again. So next summer we disappear. We'll see you again in the fall. It's a hard plant to find. There's not a lot of growers that do these anymore, but we do have a nice selection up there right now. Don't wait if you want to try some hardy cyclamen, because this is a plant that's not easy to find these days. Then they're not bad for a price too. I think the price actually came down from last year. Imagine that. That hasn't happened with anything. What's that? So up in our seasonal department, which doesn't mean it's all annuals, but we keep, there's a huge display of them up there. We just literally got another batch of them in last week, so we got lots of them to choose from. Well, there you go, fast and furious. You can always email, you know, questions, whatever you need. Email us anytime. I'm here probably too much, except for Wednesdays. I'm working in my yard. But you're welcome to call or ask any questions anytime. We got some great staff around that can do some of this for you too. So, okay. So we stopped screen sharing. We're back to, let's do a couple, and then we're going to give away some gift cards. I don't want you to get up yet. We got some of that to do. So with all the classes here, you know, it's really nice to have some people down here. You know, for 10 years, this place was 100, 150 a class. If you were down here back in the good old days, this place is packed. It's nice to have a little smaller crowd. And a lot of people, now that we started recording them, say, I'd rather sit in my robe and drink coffee and watch it whenever the hell I want to watch it instead of coming down there at 10. So, so we'll record it. You can always go back and watch it. But I thank you for coming down. You know, kind of the one thing we always do, I think it's pretty cool, is discount with the class. So this is a really easy one, because you could probably come to me after class and say, well, that's cool in the winter. I want 20%. So I don't care where you go shopping today, except for house plants. You got 20% off all your plants. So you can go shop up in seasonal. You can go to the perennials. You can go buy a tree, a shrub, whatever you want. Tell them you're at the class. They're going to get you 20% off. That'll last all through this week, through Friday. So we changed our hours here. The days are getting shorter, I hate to say, but we're 9 to 5, 7 days a week now here for the winter. But you got the whole week to come do some shopping. So today is not the day. You got a kid's soccer game or something you got to run. Come back down the week, just tell them you're at the class, and you get the 20%. Okay. So thanks again to Everett Clinic. I think it's really cool. They do this for our customers. You know, I've said it before, but I think a lot of people I've talked to besides class think that, oh man, you must be getting rich with Everett Clinic. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. You know, we were never asking them to throw us money to put Dr. Lola in here once a month kind of thing. It was about you guys. I think it's really cool to give away some gift cards. You can go spend on some fun stuff today. So I got 6 questions. I don't want anybody punching me after if I didn't pick you. I'm going to try to watch. Whoever gets their hand up first gets the first crack at them here, okay? And they're all, well, you should be able to get all these if you were paying attention to the slideshow. So these will be easy. So give me one example of a cool shrub or tree with bark color. There's one. First one up. Paperbark Maple. All right, you get one here. I'll bring. Well, you want to come hopping around here? You're going to see me hit the deck. I got 2 minutes. All right, give me one example of a plant, of any kind of plant that blooms in the dead of the winter. Gretchen's first. You got pansy. There you go. Gretchen's got one here. All right, what do we got? What is the plant with, this is the only specific one we'll see because it's one of my favorites. What is the plant with the bright purple berries on it here going into winter? She got her hand up first. We got it. There you go. All right. What is a, well, there's another one. There's a bunch to choose from. What is an example of a great winter fragrant plant here that blooms in winter? There you go. Well, jasmine summer, but here, I'll give you. There you go. Fragrant. So, and actually, I take that back because there's winter jasmine. I didn't even know. You do. You keep that. I didn't show winter jasmine, but winter jasmine is one. All right. So what is the one quote unquote annual that blooms in our pots all through the winter? There you go. She didn't raise what she said. Yeah, I heard it. Okay, last one. Who gets the lucky 6th one here? Name one winter blooming perennial. Back row. No, I won't do that one. You already got one. There you go. She got one. I should have said that. You only win one. We can't hog them, right? There you go. So I appreciate everybody coming. Hopefully you got a couple ideas for the yard today. These are always fun. I love doing the classes here. I do way too many these days, but if you're not tired of bored of me yet, tomorrow bulbs are at 11 on Sundays. We do it just a little bit later. Then we'll skip a week. And if you look at the bookmark or the website, you'll see there's still some great classes coming up here through winter. Conifer classes in 2 weeks. One of the great ones that we don't really sell much at it because it's more for you guys, but if you're curious going into winter, the putting the garden to bed class is a really good one to come in, especially if you're kind of learning a little bit about what you can save and how to save it. We go through quite a bit of cool stuff in that class, everything from what to do with my rose in the fall to the vegetable garden to the lawn to a little bit of everything, kind of getting you ready for the winter because it's 80 degrees again today, but I hate we're going to have winter at some point. I had a trade show down in Reno this week. I was gone most of the week, and it's even warmer down there as you probably expect. But usually I'm down there and it's 80 degrees and 35 at night. And it's like, oh, this is perfect. So it's the same as here. It's like 89 degrees and 65 at night. It was like just the whole West, I think, is just having one of those years. So what's that? Yeah, no, I think that one's another week after that, I think. Yeah, we still got, look at this guy. We still got winter pruning, putting the garden to bed, conifer class, evergreen perennials. We got great other houseplant class coming up. And like I mentioned, this classroom kind of converts into a big wreath making Christmas center. If you haven't done wreaths up here, talk to your friends, the family. It's a great place to come up. It's not much money. And this isn't like a typical wreath place. I think I had 40 kinds of evergreens in here to choose from, and you got a lot of options for your own style. And you can sit in here. We got helpers. This looks totally different in the winter. Some people bring a little, I don't want to know what it is to enjoy. Snacks, whatever you kind of like to do. But now with the pandemic hopefully gone, we'll have the first kind of free reign this winter. We're not going to have any restrictions on you got to have your vaccination card, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're just open season like it used to be. 2018, how's that? We'll go back 5 years almost. So mark it on the calendar because that's mid-November to mid-December. That's what this place is all about. We do some Christmas trees as well, but the wreath making is outstanding. Coming from our holiday store where Gresham and I worked at White's, the ultimate holiday store for years. This is pretty cool. It's a little different, and you can kind of show your own style, make it so fun to read. So yeah. So we got any questions? Yeah. Uh-huh. So again, we'll talk about the pruning class. That's a great one for fall. I would never ever prune evergreen in the fall. You know, when we get down to the basics of pruning, I want to cut something back to encourage new growth. We have no time left for you to grow and harden off before winter. You're probably going to have to prune it again in spring after some damage. So if you've got evergreens you haven't pruned yet, it's not the end of the world. Just wait till coming out of winter. In the case of the Mexican orange, you know, my rule I try to get everybody is prune after bloom. So if it was me on your Mexican orange, I would walk away from it, let it bloom next April, May, and then you can cut the thing in half if you wanted to. And I've got all summer to refoliate, get nice and dense, and I'm good to go for the next winter. Yep. Yeah. 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 Okay. There'd be quite a bit to choose from, honestly. Now, if we were going to go, you know, we'll kind of call that birch soaks up some water. So we're going to kind of call that a little bit of dry shade. But some good choices for you to consider. One would be the Sarcococa for sure, the sweet boxes we showed. That's a great drought tolerant shade, fragrant all winter. Epimediums would be a great choice for you underneath there. Hellebores, another great dry shade perennial. Those would all stay evergreen. The Mahonias, you know, if you wanted a little bit of hummingbird power, that's another great dry. The Oregon grapes, like we could do the little low Oregon grape styles underneath there. We've still got some of the two native-y low ones out there. That would be a great choice for you. I mean, there's a couple, but Greg, again, you can grab me after class or one of staff. We can show you quite a bit. Dry shade is it sounds weird in Washington because we rain so much, but it's a really common issue up here because it's not, you know, you could get rain all winter. You know, the birch is a little easier because you are going to get some rain through there in the winter. But we were talking about a cedar, you know, Douglas fir, a big old hemlock. You know, I know it can rain for days and there's so much needle and canopy, it's still not much getting to the ground. And those are all real common areas that a lot of those same plants work really well for. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So that's literally what they call epimedium rubrum. And so most all of those, that's your spring foliage. So if you looked at this, I mean, this one would be the same thing. This is one called Pretty in Pink. But if we fast forward it to like next March, all the new leaves that come up are going to have that beautiful modeling on it. Yeah, which again, you know, I'm pretty OCD in my own yard. And I clean up probably more than most gardeners should. I try to fight myself to leave some things for the birds and bugs and stuff in the winter. But you know, there's past 10 years ago, I was probably out cutting those back every winter. I just started over again. It's probably every 3 years for me. I just did them this last winter. I won't touch them this winter, just let them go. But the one benefit is if you do cut them back, you maximize A, the mottled foliage, and B, you really see the flowers. I mean, sometimes you got an old epimedium, it's pretty shrubby. You'll see a flower poking out here and there, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. If you cut it off, I mean, you see a carpet of the flowers, and then you get all the foliage come right back up too. And it doesn't, you know, laying the hedge clippers down, I'm not spending an hour like one stem at a time. It's pretty quick to scoop that up, throw it in the yard waste, and move on to the next. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Oh, there's quite a bit bird friendly. If we looked at a couple for berries in particular that are in here. So one, really cool. You can see the red on there. Now that'll lose its leaves. It's not evergreen, but I will have those nice red berries on there for the wildlife in the fall. You've got the pink or white. You got Beautyberry. I don't think they're going to mess with the floral berries much. That's more for just our attraction kind of thing. And then out there, I still think we have some of those choke berries or choke cherries as well, the aronia. That would be one for sure to get in there. Yeah, for some birds. Yeah. Do you have one too?
That's zebra grass. How prolific.
So zebra grass is one I have in my yard. And again, it depends a little bit on the cultivar, but if we talk just plain zebra grass, mine hits 9 foot every year. Now I don't want that. I want something like this. We just get the small one. We have little zebra. We got, well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of dwarf gold bar. No, this is when the clump will get bigger every year, but it's not going to run and pop up and reseed somewhere. It's just there's a clumper. You know, as a scale, I mean, I planted that 20 years ago at my house. You know, my clump of zebra grass is probably 3.5 feet across now after 20 years. So it's not crazy. Yeah. Yep, we got any more? Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the
Azaleas. Mildew. Yeah. Well, I'll say this: deciduous azalea, and I have a couple orange ones in my yard because I love to plant. If you don't have full sun and air, you're always going to get mildew on those. I can just be brutally honest with you. That's a plant that's very prone to mildew. It's not the end of the world. It never kills it. It's not going to do any damage. But unless I've got good air and good sun, most all deciduous azaleas are going to be a little bit on the mildew prone side. The dogwood, I can say you can thank Mother Nature this year. I'm sure everybody's seen driving around. I don't know that I've seen one native tree, big leaf maple, anything anywhere that isn't covered with mildew right now. And that's probably the way the weather pattern went. Now that we got heavy dew coming down in the morning, it's starting to set out on stuff as well. If it was me, the big thing, and this is again part of the garden in bed class, we'll talk about a little bit of fall disease. If it was me, I'm not going to spend my money and waste my time to go home and spray that right now. If we had this conversation in June, I would be the opposite. I'd be here, take this home and get that tree sprayed right away. This time of year, you know, you got a few weeks till it's going to go dormant anyway. The big thing for you is going to be clean up everything. Do not leave those leaves down as mulch. Get them all raked up, throw them in the yard waste, be done with it. And I might consider, especially with the dogwood side of it, getting a dormant spray on that tree at some point, you know, between November to, get one sunny day in there that you're like, all right, I'm motivated. Let me get that tree sprayed. You can use something totally natural like copper, horticultural oil that would take care of bugs and disease before the leaves come out. Yeah. And again, mildew, it's not that, I see it on dogwood off and on. It's not, again, it's not the end of the world. I would worry more about anthracnose, if you know what that is, on dogwood, because that would kill my flower bud, my stem, and might do some more damage to the tree. And if less spotty and the tips curl, and I can guarantee if you got a little mildew on there, you probably got some anthracnose, and that I would for sure make sure we do the dormant spray for. Yeah. And you'll be good. Again, you can clean it up this fall, get the spray on it, you're good to go, heading into spring. If it, rains until mid-June again, like this year, it's not going to solve the problem. I mean, you can get out there and monitor with a little spray if you can, even once a month, we'll probably keep it to a minimum. But if you did that, cleaned it up, and maybe did a little bit of thinning on the tree, again, better air, sun, all that stuff's going to really matter come next year. So when it's dormant this winter, look up and go, okay, I'm not talking about butchering the thing in half, and more like picking some branches out of the middle just to open up the structure a little bit. Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming.